My brother's widow stood in my garage holding a stack of legal papers and told me I was too old to be crawling under cars anymore. She said this while her boyfriend Rick smirked behind her, his arms crossed like he owned the place. It was a Saturday morning, my busiest day of the week. I had 6 customers waiting in the lobby, watching this whole scene unfold. "Earl, honey, we're not trying to be mean," Patricia said, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. "We're worried about you. You're 66 years old. Your hands shake. You forget things. Last week you forgot to call me back about Thanksgiving." I looked down at my hands. They were stained black from 45 years of working on engines, covered in scars from burns and cuts, and 1,000 minor injuries that came with the job. And yes, they trembled slightly when I held them out. Not from age, from barely controlling my anger. "I didn't forget to call you back, Patricia. I chose not to." Rick stepped forward. He was 40, maybe 45, wore designer jeans and a leather jacket that had never seen an honest day's work. "Mr. Daniels, we've consulted with a lawyer. Your brother Dave made it clear before he died that if anything happened to you, Patricia should inherit this garage. It's time to make that official before you hurt yourself, or worse, hurt a customer and get sued for everything." My customer, old Henderson, who'd been bringing his farm trucks to me for 30 years, stood up from the waiting area. "Earl's the best mechanic in 3 counties. I ain't never seen him make a mistake." Rick didn't even look at him, just kept his eyes on me. "Sir, this is a private family matter. I'm going to have to ask you to wait outside." That's when I knew. This wasn't about concern for my safety. This wasn't about family looking out for family. This was about money, and I knew exactly what they were planning. Tomorrow is Sunday, the one day my garage is closed. Patricia and Rick have insisted on coming over to my apartment for what they're calling a family meeting. They want me to sign papers, transfer ownership, make Patricia a partner with control over the business. What they don't know is that I've invited someone to that meeting, my lawyer, and he's bringing documents that are going to teach my brother's widow that trying to steal from a mechanic who spent 45 years fixing other people's problems was the biggest mistake of her life. But to understand how we got here, to understand how my brother's widow went from grieving to greedy in less than 2 years, I need to take you back to when Dave and I were just 2 kids who loved taking things apart to see how they worked. My name is Earl Daniels. I'm 66 years old, and this is the story of how I learned that some people see kindness as weakness, and how I made damn sure they regretted that mistake. I was born in 1958 in the small town of Plainfield, Ohio. My brother Dave was born 2 years later, in 1960. Our father, Robert Daniels, was a factory worker at Haham, the Ford plant in Cleveland. He worked the assembly line for 33 years, came home every night smelling like metal and exhaustion, and never once complained about it. My earliest memories are of our garage. Not a fancy garage, just a single-car detached structure behind our small house on Maple Street. But to Dave and me, it was better than any playground. Dad would come home from his shift, eat dinner, then head out to that garage to work on whatever needed fixing. Our car, the neighbor's lawn mower, Mrs. Patterson's washing machine. "Boys," he'd say, "come here. I want to show you something." Dave and I would drop whatever we were doing and run to the garage. Dad would have some broken things spread out on his workbench, parts everywhere, and he'd walk us through what was wrong and how to fix it. "See this carburetor? This is the heart of the engine. When it gets clogged, the whole car stops working. But if you clean it right, if you respect the parts, you can make it run like new." That was Dad's philosophy. Respect the parts. Understand how they work together. Fix things right the first time. I was 12 years old when I fixed my first car. Henderson, the same Henderson who still brings his trucks to me, had a 1965 Ford Mustang that wouldn't start. He'd taken it to 3 different mechanics. They all wanted to replace the whole engine. $1,500, which might as well have been $15 million to a farmer, in 1970. Dad and I spent a Saturday afternoon with that Mustang. Turned out the problem was a corroded wire that cost 12 cents to replace. Henderson tried to pay us $100. Dad refused to take more than 5. "You helped me figure it out," Dad told me that night. "That makes you a mechanic, and mechanics don't overcharge honest people." Dave wasn't as interested in the mechanical side. He was interested in the business side. When he was 16, he started keeping track of Dad's repairs in a notebook. What parts cost, what people paid, what the profit margin was. "Dad, you're undercharging," Dave said one night at dinner. "That transmission job you did for Thompson, Parts cost you $80. You charged him $100. That's $20 profit for 8 hours of work. You made $2.50 an hour. Dad shrugged. Thompson's been out of work for 3 months. What am I supposed to do? Charge him the going rate and watch his family lose their car? You could at least charge enough to break even. I did break even. I got to help someone who needed help. That's worth more than money. Dave and I were different in that way. I inherited Dad's love of fixing things. Dave inherited Mom's practical understanding that kindness didn't pay the bills. I graduated high school in 1976, went to community college for automotive technology. 2-year program that taught me everything Dad hadn't already shown me. Got certified, got a job at Morrison's Auto Repair in downtown Plainfield. Worked there for 8 years, learning the business side, building a reputation. Dave went to Ohio State, got a business degree, went to work for a company that sold industrial equipment, made good money, wore suits to work, moved to a suburb outside Cleveland with a nice house and a 2-car garage he never used for working on cars. In 1984, when I was 26, Morrison retired. He offered to sell me the garage. The property, the equipment, the business name, everything. $50,000. I had $8,000 in savings. I went to my father, explained the situation. He looked at me for a long moment. Earl, I've got $32,000 in my retirement account. Your mother and I were saving it for our old age, but I'm 55 years old. I'll work another 10 years. We'll rebuild it. You take the money and buy that garage. Dad, I can't take your retirement. Son, I worked 33 years on an assembly line putting together cars I'll never own. You have a chance to own something, to build something that's yours. That's not taking. That's me investing in something I believe in. He gave me the $32,000. I borrowed $18,000 from the bank. In June 1984, I bought Morrison's Auto Repair, changed the name to Daniel's Auto Repair, hung a sign that said honest work, fair prices, no BS. The first 5 years were brutal. The loan payments, the slow build of customers, the equipment that kept breaking down. I lived in a tiny apartment above a pizza shop, ate ramen noodles and peanut butter sandwiches, put every dollar back into the business. Dave helped when he could. He'd drive down on weekends, help me with the books, give me advice on how to market the business. We were different, but we were brothers. That meant something. In 1989, I met Linda. She came in with a blown head gasket on her Honda Civic. I told her it would cost $1,200 to fix. She started crying right there in my waiting room. She was a single mom, working 2 jobs, barely making rent. $1,200 might as well have been $12,000. I can't fix it for free, I told her, but I can fix it for cost, $400, and you can pay me $50 a month until it's done. No interest. She looked at me like I'd just offered her a winning lottery ticket. We ended up dating for 3 years. Got married in 1992. Small ceremony at the courthouse, reception in the garage because it was the biggest space we had access to. Just like my parents' generation, we believed in simple and honest. Linda understood the business, understood that sometimes I'd come home at 9 p.m. because I'd promised to have someone's car ready by morning. Understood that some months we barely broke even because I couldn't bring myself to charge full price to people who were struggling. She worked as a bookkeeper for a local hardware store and kept our household budget tight. We never had kids. Not for lack of trying, just wasn't in the cards for us. But we had the garage. We had our community. We had each other. That was enough. My father died in 1995. Heart attack, sudden, at age 66. He was working on a lawnmower in his garage when it happened. Mom found him there, wrench still in his hand. At his funeral, over 100 people showed up. People he'd helped over the years. People whose cars and appliances and tools he'd fixed for cost or for free or for nothing at all. Your father was the most honest man I ever knew, Henderson told me at the funeral. He'd give you the shirt off his back and apologize it wasn't nicer. I inherited that garage, the one behind my parents' house. I couldn't bring myself to sell it, couldn't empty it out. I kept it exactly as Dad had left it. His tools on the wall, his workbench, the coffee can where he kept bolts and screws organized by size. Sometimes I'd go there on Sunday afternoons and just sit, remembering him showing me how to rebuild a carburetor. Dave did well in his career, really well. By the late 90s, he was a regional manager for his company, making 6 figures. Had a beautiful house in Westlake, a suburb where every lawn looked the same, and every house cost more than my garage was worth. He met Patricia in 1998 at a company event. She was a pharmaceutical sales rep, attractive, ambitious, well-dressed, everything Dave thought he wanted. They got married in 2000. Big wedding at a country club. I was the best man. Linda and I felt out of place among all the corporate people in their expensive clothes, but we were there for Dave. Patricia never liked me. I could tell from the first time we met, the way she looked at my work clothes, the way she wrinkled her nose when she shook my hand and felt the calluses, the way she asked Dave, in a voice she thought I couldn't hear, why his brother didn't have a real career. Over the years, Dave's visits became less frequent. Once a month became once every few months became just major holidays. He was busy with work, Patricia would explain, climbing the corporate ladder. They had a lifestyle to maintain. But Dave still called, every Sunday morning. Without fail, 7 a.m., his phone call would come in. We'd talk about sports, about business, about life. He'd ask about the garage. I'd ask about his job. It was our thing. The Sunday morning call. Linda died in 2014. Cancer. Fast and brutal. 6 months from diagnosis to funeral. She was only 52 years old. Dave was there every week during those 6 months. He'd drive the hour from Westlake to Plainfield, sit with Linda while I worked, bring food, help with whatever needed doing. Patricia complained about the time he was spending away from home, but Dave ignored her. Blood was blood. At Linda's funeral, Dave put his arm around me and said something I'd never forget. "Earl, you and Linda built something real, something that mattered. I've got the big house and the nice car, but I don't have what you had. I don't know if I ever will. After Linda died, I threw myself into work. What else was there? The apartment was too quiet. The bed was too empty. But the garage? The garage was full of problems that had solutions, full of work that made sense, full of customers who needed help." Dave kept calling. Every Sunday, 7 a.m., like clockwork. Those calls kept me going through the worst of the grief. Then, 2 years ago, Dave had a massive stroke. He was only 62 years old. Patricia called me from the hospital. "Earl, you need to come. It's Dave. It's bad." I dropped everything and drove to Cleveland Clinic. Dave was in ICU, unconscious, hooked up to machines. Patricia was in the waiting room, perfectly made up even in crisis, talking to doctors about DNR orders and estate planning. Dave died 3 days later without waking up. 1 minute my brother was alive, the next he was gone. No goodbye, no last conversation, no final Sunday morning call. The funeral was huge, all of Dave's corporate contacts, Patricia's family, people in expensive suits who'd never met Dave more than twice. I sat in the front row in my only suit, the same one I'd worn to Linda's funeral, and tried to understand how my little brother was gone. After the funeral, after everyone else left, Patricia pulled me aside. "Earl, I know this is hard for you. Dave was your only family, and I want you to know you still have family. You still have me." I was touched. Thought maybe I'd been wrong about Patricia all these years. Maybe grief had brought out a better side of her. That lasted about 3 months. Then the phone calls started. Patricia needed help with something at her house. Could I come look at her dishwasher? Her garage door opener? Her car was making a strange noise. Could I check it out? At first I was happy to help. She was Dave's widow. She was family. I'd drive to Westlake after work, fix whatever needed fixing, refuse payment. That's what family does. But I started noticing things. The way she'd walk me through her house, pointing out how expensive everything was. The photos of Dave she'd already taken down. The way she'd mention, casually, that maintaining this lifestyle on her salary alone was difficult. Dave had a good life insurance policy, but it's not enough to cover everything forever. This house, it's so expensive to maintain. I'd just nod and keep working on whatever I was fixing. 6 months after Dave died, Patricia started asking about the garage. "Earl, Dave used to tell me the garage property is worth quite a bit. Have you ever thought about selling?" "Never. But you're getting older. Don't you want to retire? Enjoy your golden years?" "I'm 64, not 84, and I enjoy my work. Still, it must be valuable, the land alone, in this market." I didn't like where this was going, but I kept my mouth shut and kept fixing her dishwasher. Then, about a year ago, Patricia showed up at the garage unannounced with Rick, introduced him as her boyfriend. Rick was younger than her by at least 10 years, dressed like he thought he was a rock star, worked in real estate development. "Rick has some great ideas about property investment," Patricia said. "I told him about your garage. He thinks there's real potential there. Rick walked around my garage like he was already measuring it for demolition, looked at the equipment with barely disguised contempt, looked at me the same way. Patricia tells me you've owned this place since the 80s. You must have it paid off by now. Property this size, this location, you could get 7, maybe 800,000 for it. Imagine that kind of retirement fund. It's not for sale. Everything's for sale at the right price, Mr. Daniels. They left, but I knew they'd be back. And I knew what they wanted. They wanted me to sell the garage, wanted a piece of whatever I got for it. Patricia as Dave's widow, Rick as her financial advisor, both of them circling like vultures. I started paying closer attention, started noticing things, like how Patricia would call me to fix something at her house, but Rick would just happen to be there, like how they'd steer conversations toward my business, my property, my retirement plans, like how Patricia started mentioning that Dave had told her, supposedly, that if anything ever happened to me, she should inherit the garage. That's when I called my lawyer, Tom Mitchell. Tom and I had gone to high school together. He'd handled the paperwork when I bought the garage, when Linda and I got married, when Linda died. Tom, I need you to look into something for me. Patricia is claiming Dave told her she should inherit my garage if something happens to me. Is there any legal basis for that? Tom did some digging. Called me back 2 days later. Earl, I pulled Dave's will. Everything went to Patricia. House, savings, life insurance. But there's nothing in there about your garage. Nothing about you at all, actually. And unless you've put her in your will, she has no claim to anything you own. I haven't updated my will since Linda died. Then currently, your assets would go to your closest living relative, which would be Patricia as Dave's widow. But that's only because you haven't specified otherwise. Want me to draft a new will? Not yet. I want to see how far she's willing to go with this. I didn't have to wait long. 3 months ago, things started getting weird at the garage. Little things at first. Tools that weren't where I'd left them. Parts that went missing then showed up in the wrong place. A customer complained that I'd forgotten to tighten their oil drain plug, which I'd never done in 40 years of working on cars. Then bigger things. A tire that fell off a car 2 blocks away from my garage. The customer swore I'd just done the rotation. I checked my records. I had done the rotation, and I'd torqued those lug nuts to spec. Someone had loosened them after the car left my garage. I installed security cameras. Front entrance, back entrance, the shop floor, the parking lot. Didn't tell anyone. Just quietly had them installed one Sunday when the garage was closed. 2 weeks after installing the cameras, I caught something. Rick, coming into my garage at 11 p.m. on a Tuesday. I was long gone, but he had a key. Must have copied it when Patricia had me give her a spare for emergencies months ago. I watched the footage. Rick walked straight to my toolboard, moved some wrenches around, walked to a car I'd just finished working on, a brake job for Mrs. Chen, and loosened the brake line fitting. Not enough to cause immediate failure. Just enough to cause a slow leak. My blood ran cold watching that footage. He was trying to make me look incompetent, trying to create safety incidents that would destroy my reputation. Maybe even trying to create a situation where someone got hurt and sued me. I didn't confront him. Not yet. Instead, I kept recording, kept documenting. Over the next month, Rick came back 4 more times. Always late at night. Always sabotaging something small. A loose battery cable. A disconnected vacuum line. An oil filter not quite tight enough. But I caught every incident. And more importantly, I fixed every problem the next morning before any customer ever left with a dangerous vehicle. Mrs. Chen never knew her brake line had been tampered with because I checked and retightened it before she picked up her car. I made copies of all the footage. Gave 1 set to Tom, kept 1 set in a safe deposit box, kept 1 set at home. This wasn't just about my reputation anymore. This was criminal. This was attempted vehicular manslaughter. Then, 2 weeks ago, Patricia called and asked to meet for coffee. Said she wanted to talk about something important. I agreed. We met at the diner on Main Street. Earl, I need to be honest with you about something. Dave and I talked a lot about his brother before he died, about how you'd be alone after Linda passed, about how the garage was your whole life, and Dave made me promise that if anything ever happened to you, I'd make sure the business didn't just disappear. What are you saying, Patricia? I'm saying Dave wanted me to be involved in the garage, to help you, to eventually take it over if you couldn't run it anymore. He knew you'd never sell it, so he wanted to make sure it went to family. I'm right here. I'm fine. I don't need help. Earl, honey, you're 66 years old. How much longer can you keep working 70-hour weeks? What happens when you can't climb under cars anymore? What happens when your hands shake too much to do detail work? My hands don't shake, but they will. And when that happens, Dave wanted me to be ready to step in, to keep the Daniels name going. Patricia, you don't know anything about cars. But Rick does. He's worked with automotive businesses before. He could manage the operations. I could handle the business side. We could turn Daniels Auto Repair into something bigger. Maybe franchise it. Maybe expand to multiple locations. There it was. The real plan. Get control of the garage, push me out, turn my father's legacy into some corporate chain. No. Earl, be reasonable. Dave wanted this. He told me. Show me where Dave said that. Show me in writing where my brother told you to take my business. She didn't have anything to show me, because Dave never said it, because she was lying. I stood up to leave. That's when she showed her real face. Earl, I'm trying to be nice about this, but there are other ways. Rick knows people, lawyers, city inspectors, people who could make your life very difficult if they started looking closely at your operation. How old is your garage? Is every safety regulation up to current code? Are all your disposal methods for oil and fluids completely legal? Any violations could shut you down. Are you threatening me? I'm protecting what Dave wanted, and I'm giving you a chance to do this the easy way. We can work together. I can be your partner, or I can be your problem. Your choice. She left. I sat in that diner for an hour, drinking cold coffee, understanding with perfect clarity that my brother's widow had become my enemy. That night, I went through every piece of paperwork I owned, every record of every dollar I'd ever made or spent, every business license, every permit, every inspection certificate. Made sure everything was perfectly in order, because I knew Patricia and Rick were going to come at me with everything they had. I also pulled out something I hadn't looked at in years, the property deeds. Not just for the garage, for all the properties I owned. See, what Patricia and Rick didn't know, what almost nobody knew, was that I wasn't just a mechanic barely scraping by. I was a mechanic who'd been investing in real estate since 1985. Every time I had a good year, every time I managed to save a few $1,000s, I'd buy property. Not houses. Commercial properties. Small ones. A storefront here, a vacant lot there. Places nobody else wanted. In parts of town that were run down but had potential. Over 40 years, I'd accumulated 4 properties besides the garage. A laundromat, a small strip mall with 6 units, 2 vacant lots that I leased to a guy who ran a Christmas tree lot every December. Paid off properties, all of them, bringing in rental income that just sat in my accounts because I didn't need it. The garage property, worth about $850,000. The laundromat, $300,000. The strip mall, $500,000. The 2 lots, $250,000 combined. Total real estate holdings, about $1.9 million, plus the business equipment, tools, customer list, and goodwill of Daniels Auto Repair, another $100,000 conservatively, plus my savings, investments, and retirement accounts, about $900,000. Total net worth, $2.9 million. And I lived in a 2-bedroom apartment that cost me $700 a month. Drove a 2008 Ford F-150 with 200,000 miles on it. Wore the same work clothes I'd been wearing for a decade. Ate at the same diner 3 times a week and ordered the same meatloaf special, because that's what my father taught me. You don't spend money to impress people. You save money to build security. You invest in things that last. Patricia and Rick thought they were targeting a vulnerable old man living paycheck to paycheck. They had no idea they were targeting someone who could buy their house in cash and not even notice the missing money. I called Tom Mitchell. Tom, remember how I said I wanted to see how far Patricia would go? I've seen enough. I need you to prepare some documents for me. And I need you to clear your schedule for tomorrow afternoon. We're going to have a family meeting. And it's going to be educational. Patricia had insisted the meeting be at my apartment. Said it would be more private, more comfortable. She and Rick showed up at 2 p.m. on Sunday like we'd planned. My apartment isn't much. 2 bedrooms, small kitchen, living room with furniture that Linda picked out back in 2010. But it's clean. It's paid for. And on this particular Sunday, it was going to be the stage for Patricia learning the hardest lesson of her life. They came in with their briefcase full of papers. Patricia wore a concerned expression. Rick wore confidence like cologne. Earl, thank you for agreeing to meet with us, Patricia said, sitting on my couch like she already owned it. We know this is difficult, but we're family. We need to work together. What exactly did you want to talk about? I asked. Rick opened the briefcase. We've had a lawyer draw up some partnership papers. Simple stuff. You remain the primary owner, but Patricia becomes a managing partner with authority to make business decisions. That way, if anything happens to you, if you get sick or have an accident, the garage can keep running. And what do I get out of this partnership? Security, Patricia said. Peace of mind, knowing that Dave's legacy is protected. Dave's legacy? Dave never worked a day in this garage. But he cared about you, Patricia said, her voice getting an edge. He worried about you. He wanted to make sure you were taken care of. Show me where he said that. Earl, we've been through this. Show me in writing. Show me a letter, an email, anything where Dave said he wanted you to have my garage. Patricia's face hardened. Fine. You want to play it that way? Rick, show him the other documents. Rick pulled out more papers. These are complaints filed with the city. Safety violations, environmental violations, improper disposal of hazardous materials. Any one of these could shut you down for months while they investigate. You filed false reports? We filed legitimate concerns, Rick said. The garage is old. Things slip through the cracks. It's not personal. It's about safety. That's when I heard the knock on my door. Right on time. Excuse me, I said. I invited someone else to this meeting. I opened the door. Tom Mitchell walked in, briefcase in hand. Behind him was Officer Mike Rodriguez from the Plainfield Police Department, and behind him was Steve Chen, the county prosecutor. Patricia and Rick both went pale. Earl, what is this? Patricia demanded. This is me calling your bluff, I said. Everyone please sit down. This won't take long. Tom set his briefcase on my coffee table. Patricia Morrison, Richard Coleman, I'm Tom Mitchell, Mr. Daniels' attorney. I need to inform you that this conversation is being recorded with the consent of all legal parties present. We're leaving, Rick said, starting to stand. Sit down, Mr. Coleman, Officer Rodriguez said, his hand on his belt. You're not under arrest, yet, but we have questions. They sat. Tom opened his briefcase and pulled out a laptop. Mr. Daniels, would you like to show them what you showed me? I turned the laptop toward Patricia and Rick. Pressed play on the security footage. The first clip showed Rick entering my garage at 11 p.m. with a copied key. The second clip showed him tampering with Mrs. Chen's brake line. The third showed him loosening lug nuts on Henderson's truck. Rick's face went from pale to gray. Patricia's mouth opened and closed like a fish. That's not what it looks like, Rick stammered. It looks like criminal mischief, reckless endangerment, and attempted vehicular manslaughter, Steve Chen said. Mr. Rodriguez, please read Mr. Coleman his rights. Wait, Patricia said, standing up. Rick did that on his own. I didn't know anything about it. Tom pulled out more papers. We'll get to your involvement in a moment, Mrs. Morrison. But first, let's talk about the false reports you filed with the city. The inspector was very interested to learn that all 6 complaints came from the same IP address, an IP address registered to your home in Westlake. Patricia's face crumbled. I was trying to protect Dave's interests. Dave's been dead for 2 years, I said quietly. This isn't about Dave. This is about you seeing dollar signs and thinking I was too old and stupid to fight back. Tom pulled out another document. This is your brother David's will. I've read it 3 times now. There is no mention of the garage. No mention of any agreement or understanding about Patricia inheriting or managing Earl's business, because that conversation never happened. Dave told me verbally. Dave told you nothing, I said, because Dave knew I'd never sell that garage. He knew it was Dad's legacy and mine. He would never ask me to give it to someone who doesn't know a spark plug from a lug nut. Officer Rodriguez stood up and walked over to Rick. Mr. Coleman, stand up. You're under arrest for criminal mischief, reckless endangerment, and attempted assault with a deadly weapon. The brake line tampering could have killed someone. He handcuffed Rick right there in my living room. Rick was yelling about lawyers and mistakes and misunderstandings, but Officer Rodriguez wasn't listening. He read him his rights and led him out to the squad car. Patricia was crying now. Earl, please. I'm sorry. I made a mistake. Rick convinced me that this was the right thing to do. He said you'd never agree to sell and we needed to force the situation. I shouldn't have listened to him. You shouldn't have tried to steal from me, I said. Steve Chen handed Patricia a document. Mrs. Morrison, you're not being arrested today, but you are being notified that if you file any more false reports, if you make any attempt to claim ownership or partnership in Daniels Auto Repair, or if you contact Mr. Daniels except through his attorney, you will face charges. Do you understand? She took the paper with shaking hands and nodded. Good, Steve said. Officer Rodriguez will drive you home. I suggest you hire a lawyer." After they left, Tom and I sat in my living room in silence for a long moment. "You could have handled this quietly," Tom said. "Could have just told her no and been done with it. She threatened my business. Her boyfriend tried to make it look like I was hurting people. That's not something you handle quietly. What are you going to do about the will? Draft me a new one. Everything goes to the high school's automotive program. Let them train the next generation of mechanics. Let them have the tools, the equipment, the building. Turn it into a teaching garage. Nothing to Patricia? Not a penny. She and Dave had 15 years together. She got his estate. She doesn't get mine too." Tom nodded and started packing up his briefcase. "Earl, can I ask you something? How much are you actually worth?" "Why?" "Because I've known you for 40 years, and I always thought you were scraping by, living in this apartment, driving that old truck. I never realized you were sitting on a real estate empire. It's not an empire. It's just smart investing. Dad taught me to live below my means and save the difference. So that's what I did. 40 years of living like I'm poor when I'm not. Almost $3 million, Earl. You could retire tomorrow, buy a house on the beach, live like a king. And do what? Sit around waiting to die? The garage is my life, Tom. The work matters. The customers matter. I'm not retiring until I can't turn a wrench anymore." He left. I sat in my apartment, alone again, and thought about Dave. About how he'd been married to a woman who'd tried to steal from his brother less than 2 years after his death. About how she'd used his name to justify it, claiming he'd wanted this. Dave would have been furious. Dave would have driven down here and handled Patricia himself. But Dave was gone, so I had to do it. My phone rang. Henderson. "Earl, I just heard from Rodriguez. He told me what happened. Are you okay?" "I'm fine, Henderson. Better than fine. Rick tried to kill me, loosening those lug nuts on my truck. I drive that thing 60 miles an hour on the highway. I know. I caught it on camera and fixed it before you picked up the truck. You were never in danger, but I could have been. Earl, I'm testifying at his trial. That man belongs in prison. Thank you, Henderson." "No, thank you. For 40 years, you've kept my farm running. You've never once overcharged me or done me wrong. You're a good man, Earl. Better than most." After I hung up, I walked to my bedroom and opened the closet. On the top shelf was a box I hadn't touched in years. Inside were photos from when Dave and I were kids, working on cars with Dad in that garage behind our house, covered in grease, smiling like we'd won the lottery. I pulled out one photo in particular. Dave and me, maybe 14 and 12 years old, standing on either side of Dad in front of a 1969 Chevy Camaro we'd just finished restoring. Dad's hands were on our shoulders. We all looked so proud. That's the Dave I wanted to remember. Not the Dave who married Patricia. Just my little brother who loved hanging out in the garage, even if he couldn't tell a transmission from a carburetor. I put the photo on my dresser where I'd see it every morning. A reminder of what mattered. Family was supposed to mean something. But when family forgot that, when family became about taking instead of giving, then you had to protect what you'd built. It's been 6 months since that meeting in my apartment. 6 months since Patricia and Rick learned that trying to steal from a mechanic who spent 40 years fixing problems was the biggest mistake of their lives. Rick is in prison. Took a plea deal. 5 years for the brake line tampering and the other sabotage. The prosecutor had him dead to rights on the security footage. His lawyer tried to argue that he never intended to hurt anyone, that he was just trying to make me look incompetent. The judge didn't buy it. Said that loosening brake lines and lug nuts was attempted murder, whether he meant it that way or not. Patricia avoided criminal charges by cooperating with the investigation. She admitted that the false city reports were her idea, that she'd been paying Rick to sabotage my garage for 3 months. She got probation, community service, and a restraining order that says she can't come within 500 feet of me or my business. She lost her house in Westlake, had to sell it to pay the legal fees and restitution. Last I heard, she moved to an apartment in Cleveland, works as a sales rep, same as before, but Rick's legal troubles destroyed her reputation. Her company let her go. She's struggling. Part of me feels bad about that. She was Dave's wife. She was family once. But then I remember her sitting in my living room, threatening to destroy my business, and the sympathy disappears. Some people need to learn lessons the hard way. The garage is busier than ever. Word spread about what happened, about how Patricia and Rick tried to sabotage me and failed, about how I'd been running security cameras and caught everything. People respect that. They bring me their cars because they know I'm careful, that I check everything, that I don't cut corners. I hired an assistant. Young guy named Marcus, 23 years old, just graduated from the community college automotive program. Same program I went to 40 years ago. Kid's got talent. Reminds me of myself at that age, hungry to learn, respectful of the tools, honest with customers. Mr. Daniels, he said last week, why do you charge so little? Mrs. Patterson's transmission job, you charged her $800. Every other shop quoted her $1,500. Mrs. Patterson is 82 years old and lives on Social Security. You want me to charge her a week's worth of her income for a transmission? But you barely made any profit. I made enough, and I kept an 82-year-old woman mobile so she can get to her doctor appointments and her grandkids' school plays. That's worth more than profit. Marcus nodded slowly. My father would have charged her the full $1,500. Then your father and I have different philosophies. Yeah, that's why I wanted to work for you, instead of him. I've been teaching Marcus everything Dad taught me. How to diagnose by sound, how to respect the parts, how to treat customers like family instead of walking wallets. He's a fast learner. In a few years, he'll be as good as I am. Maybe better. I've also been working with Tom on the will. We've got it all set up now. When I die, the garage property and equipment goes to the community college automotive program. They'll turn it into a teaching facility. A place where kids like Marcus can learn the trade from working on real cars for real customers. A place that charges honest prices and teaches honest work. The other properties, the rental income, the savings, all of that goes into a trust that funds scholarships for students in the program. Kids who want to learn but can't afford the tuition. Kids like I was in 1976 who needed a chance. Nothing goes to Patricia. Nothing goes to any of Dave's extended family. They had their chance. They chose greed over honor. The classic car collection. That's the part I haven't told anyone about. The part even Tom doesn't know the full value of. See, for 30 years, I've been buying classic cars. Not to flip them. Not to show them. Just to own them. To restore them. To keep them perfect. They're stored in my father's old garage. The one behind my parents' house. The one I inherited when Dad died. I've expanded it over the years. Built a climate-controlled addition. Turned it into a proper storage facility. Inside that garage are 11 cars. A 1967 Chevy Camaro SS. A 1969 Ford Mustang Boss 429. A 1970 Plymouth Barracuda. A 1963 Corvette Stingray. And 7 others, all fully restored, all worth between $50,000 and $200,000 each. Total value of the collection, about $1.2 million. That collection goes to Marcus. He doesn't know it yet. But when I die, he's going to get a letter from Tom explaining that I've left him 11 classic cars with instructions. He can sell them and use the money to start his own garage. Or he can keep them and maintain them and pass them on to someone else who loves cars the way we do. His choice. But either way, he'll have a foundation, a start. The same thing my father gave me when he handed over his retirement savings in 1984. Last Sunday, I drove out to my father's old garage, unlocked the doors, walked through the collection, ran my hands over the hoods of cars that represented 40 years of patient restoration work. I stopped at the Camaro, the same one from the photo on my dresser, the one Dad and Dave and I restored together back in 1972. Dad had bought it as a rusted wreck. We spent 2 years bringing it back to life. When we were done, it was perfect. Dad sold it in 1973 because he needed the money. I always regretted that. So in 1999, I tracked it down, bought it back. It wasn't in great shape anymore. The guy who owned it had let it deteriorate. Took me 3 years to restore it again. But now it's exactly as it was in 1972. Perfect. That's the car Marcus is going to get the keys to first. The one with the most history. The one that matters most. I sat in the driver's seat, hands on the steering wheel, and thought about Dad, about Dave, about Linda, about everyone I'd lost and everything I'd built. This garage full of cars wasn't just about the vehicles. It was about memory, about legacy, about passing something on. My phone rang. Marcus. Mr. Daniels, we've got a problem. Henderson's truck just came in and the transmission is making a noise I've never heard before. Can you come look at it? Be there in 15 minutes. I locked up the garage, got in my F-150, and drove back to Daniels Auto Repair. Back to work. Back to what mattered. Because that's what mechanics do. We fix problems. We keep things running. We show up when people need us. And I plan to keep showing up until I can't turn a wrench anymore. I'm 67 years old now. My hands shake a little more than they used to. My back hurts after long days under cars. But I'm still here, still working, still fixing things. Marcus has become more than an assistant. He's a partner in everything but name. He handles most of the difficult jobs now. I supervise, I teach, I handle the customers. Together we're keeping Daniel's auto repair running the way Dad would have wanted. Last month, Henderson brought his grandson to the garage. Tommy, 14 years old, interested in learning about cars. Mr. Daniels, Tommy here wants to know if he can hang around the garage on Saturdays. Watch, learn, maybe help out a little. I looked at this kid, saw the same hunger to learn that I'd had at that age, saw the same respect in his eyes that Dave used to have when Dad was teaching us. Tommy, you see that workbench over there? That was my father's. He taught me everything I know standing at that bench. If you want to learn, you're welcome here, but you've got to follow the rules. Respect the tools. Respect the customers. Respect the work. You do that, and I'll teach you everything I can. Tommy's face lit up like I'd just given him $1 million. Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. He's been here every Saturday for a month now, already learning, already understanding that fixing cars isn't just about turning wrenches. It's about solving problems, about helping people, about building something that lasts. I got a letter 2 weeks ago, Patricia's handwriting. I almost threw it away without opening it, but something made me read it. Earl, I know I have no right to contact you. I know the restraining order expired and you probably hoped you'd never hear from me again, but I needed to tell you something. I'm sorry. Really sorry. Not sorry I got caught. Sorry for what I did. Sorry for who I became after Dave died. When Dave was alive, I always felt like I wasn't good enough. Like his family looked down on me because I wasn't from Plainfield, because I didn't understand your world. And when he died, I saw the garage, and all I could think was that this was my chance to prove I deserved to be part of the Daniels family, to show that I could run a business, make money, be successful. But I went about it all wrong. I let Rick convince me that you were too old, too stubborn, too stuck in the past. I let myself believe that taking the garage was somehow helping you, and I'm ashamed of that. Rick is in prison. That's where he belongs. What he did was evil, but what I did wasn't much better. I tried to take something you'd spent your whole life building. I used Dave's name to justify it. I filed false reports. I lied. I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't deserve it. But I wanted you to know that I understand now what Dave saw in you. You're not just a mechanic. You're a man of principle, a man who built something real, a man who treats people right. Dave loved you more than anything. He was so proud to be your brother, and I'm sorry that I dishonored his memory by going after you. I hope the garage is doing well. I hope you're healthy. I hope someday, maybe years from now, you can think of me without anger. Patricia, I read that letter 3 times. Then I folded it up and put it in the box with the photos of Dave. I'm not ready to forgive her. Maybe I never will be, but I can acknowledge that she's trying to be better, that she's learned something from all this. That's more than most people do. Yesterday was Sunday, my day off, but I went to the garage anyway, found Marcus there, working on his own car, an old Honda Civic he's been slowly restoring. Mr. Daniels, I didn't expect you today. Couldn't stay away. This place gets in your blood. We worked together for a few hours. Him asking questions, me answering, sharing stories about Dad, about Dave, about the 40-plus years I'd spent in this garage. Mr. Daniels, can I ask you something? Shoot. Why didn't you ever expand? You could have opened multiple locations, franchised, made millions. I set down my wrench and looked around the garage, at the tools on the walls, at the cars in various states of repair, at the coffee pot in the corner that had been brewing the same terrible coffee for 20 years. Marcus, my father worked on an assembly line for 33 years. He put together pieces of cars he'd never own. But in his garage, in his free time, he fixed things for people, made them whole again. And people knew him, trusted him, respected him. I see. This garage isn't about making millions. It's about doing good work, about being someone people can count on, about building something that means more than money. But you could have had both, success and integrity. Maybe, but I've got something better. I've got enough. I've got work I love. I've got customers who trust me. I've got you learning the trade. I've got Tommy coming in on Saturdays with stars in his eyes. That's wealth, Marcus. The kind you can't put in a bank account. We worked in comfortable silence for a while. Then Marcus said something that made me stop. Mr. Daniels, I want to buy the garage. When you're ready to retire, I want to buy it from you. I've been saving. I know I can't afford what it's worth, but maybe we could work out payments or something. I looked at this kid, 24 years old. Good heart, good hands, good head on his shoulders, the kind of person Dad would have trusted. Marcus, we'll talk about that when the time comes. But I'm not ready to retire yet. This old mechanic's got a few more years left. I hope so, sir. I've got a lot more to learn. We finished up and locked the garage. As I drove home in my F-150, the same truck I'd been driving for 15 years, I thought about the future, about Marcus taking over, about Tommy learning, about the collection of classic cars waiting in Dad's old garage for someone worthy to appreciate them. I thought about Patricia trying to steal it all, about Rick trying to sabotage it, about how close I'd come to losing everything to people who saw dollar signs instead of legacy. But I didn't lose it. I fought back, and I won. Not because I was rich, not because I was powerful, but because I was patient, because I documented everything, because I built relationships with people like Tom and Officer Rodriguez and Steve Chen, because I'd spent 40 years being honest, and that honesty had earned me allies. That's the real wealth, the kind that protects you when people come after what you've built. I pulled into the parking lot of my apartment building, saw Mrs. Patterson watering her flowers on her balcony, waved to her. She waved back. Simple life, honest work, good neighbors, a garage full of cars that need fixing and customers who trust me to fix them. Dave would have been proud. Dad would have been proud. And me? I'm at peace. I'm 67 years old. I run an auto repair garage that my father would recognize. My brother's widow tried to steal it from me. Her boyfriend tried to sabotage it. They both learned that you don't mess with a man who spent 40 years earning trust one honest repair at a time. I'm not rich. Well, I am. But I don't live like it. I live like my father lived. Below my means. Saving the difference. Investing in things that last. And when I die, it all goes to the next generation. To kids who want to learn an honest trade. To young mechanics who need a chance. To people who understand that fixing things is about more than money. It's about keeping the world running. Patricia tried to take my legacy. She failed. Because legacy isn't something you can steal. It's something you earn, something you build, something you pass on to people who deserve it. My name is Earl Daniels. I'm a mechanic, and I'm living proof that the best revenge isn't getting even. It's living well. It's protecting what matters. It's standing your ground when people try to take what you've built. I've got grease under my fingernails and scars on my hands and a shop full of cars that need fixing. And I wouldn't trade any of it for Patricia's big house or Rick's fancy clothes or anything else that doesn't last, because what I've got is real. What I've got matters. And what I've got, nobody can take away. That's what my father taught me. That's what I'm teaching Marcus. And that's what will outlive all of us. Did you like my story? Which city are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. There's so much more on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next story with love and respect.